Good afternoon. I'm Mike Nichols with PMOPA. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar on identifying threats and errors from PMOPA's Flight Data Monitoring Program. Excited to have with us today Joyce, who is the data analyst with Fuzion Safety, who has been doing all of the detailed analytical work looking at the flight data that PMOPA members have submitted, along with Kimberly Coryat, who is the chair of PMOPA's Safety Committee. Jim is going to walk through the presentation showing the early lessons learned from the data, engage you in some questions, and hopefully we'll have a robust discussion via chat or via Q&A. I do encourage you to use the Q&A portal that's in your Zoom screen. If you're on the computer, it's in the bottom towards the center. Click on the Q&A and type your questions in, and we'll review those at the end. Also, if you're not participating, if you've not signed up to participate in PMOPA's Flight Data Monitoring Program, please do so via the PMOPA website. If you go to pmopa.com and then look at the safety menu bar, the first item listed is flight data monitoring. Information about the program as well as the form to sign up is there. And if you have signed up to participate, thank you very much. We greatly appreciate it, as these insights will help our safety program immensely. With that, Jim, turn it over to you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. Welcome, everybody. What I want to do is show you some of the stuff we've been working on since we last talked to some of you. Last time we discussed some approach issues. What I wanted to look at next is some departure issues. So one of the things you want to see is if people are turning out early and too low on departure. And when I looked at that for your aircraft, turns out a lot of you are banking to the right, not many to the left. And I said, well, wait a second, that's not them turning. That's probably them not stepping on the rudder enough with all that torque you turboprops have. So decided to make an event out of that. So anytime at this is just perspective, not a done deal yet, but this is what we're looking at, a prospective triggered event. At 35 feet, if you're already in more than 5 degrees of bank, it'll fire an event. And as you can see, there were none much more than 3 degrees to the left. So I think that's a good standard to hold ourselves to. Also assessed, and these values can change. The green, it's like, hey, that's a good angle of attack range, and then below that's low, orange is high, and red might be extremely high. So that's what the next chart, we just look at how many we had each month, and then for a whole year. And this is the way we do a lot of our statistical analysis. We look for triggered events, look to see if there's seasonal, if there's issues at particular airfields, and then track it over time and see if we're getting better. This might be something that as soon as everybody knows, hey, Jim's got a triggered event looking for my bank angle on takeoff, maybe I ought to pay more attention to that. Sometimes I don't have any turboprop time, but got about 1,000 in the Cirrus, and I remember sometimes I didn't step on it. It's like, whoa, a little surprise, and had to go catch it. So it happens to all of us. While looking at that, if you notice back here, the size of the dots were by the torque. So the bigger the dot, the less torque's like, why would somebody be at 35 feet and already have their torque back? So let's look at that. Let's see people that are more, and again, these numbers are just notional. We'll hash them out to figure out what we really want to look at. But again, at 35 feet on departure, if you're not within 1575, it's going to throw one. So about 7.2% of the departures for that year had a power off of that. And so to break it down a little bit more, we're looking at some good speeds, and then maybe slow or fast to see what might be going on. So that slow guy might be of concern. And then the next issue I wanted to talk about is wind shear. This is a new one. Why do we want to look at wind shear? Well, there's a couple cases of some microbursts that some of you, hopefully all of you, are familiar with. But you can have wind shear that isn't associated with microbursts as well, that can put you short of the runway as well. So we want to track that. NASA was kind enough to give me an equation to use to look for that. Unfortunately, some of the stuff that's in here isn't recorded in the aircraft, but digging deep into the web, they also provide some formulas so like this one is the vertical wind component, not captured, but by using the vertical velocity and some other parameters, we're able to, grab it and meld it into this formula to give us a good number. So for those two mishaps, these are those F factors that formula derives. And so it got pretty bad up here, and that threw them into the ground. They couldn't recover from it. The FAA defines F factor of 0.10 as hazardous, and they've got a must alert threshold of 0.13 for onboard detection systems. So if we look at 0.10 in our analysis, that's probably something worth tracking to see how often and where it might be happening. So here's an approach. Touchdown time in seconds. So the last 5 minutes of the flight. This is the vertical wind, the one I was talking about that we derived out of, it's not recorded, but we came up with the equation for it, so it helps us. And if you look at ground speed and true airspeed, the gap in between the two is headwind. And we can also detect it because your aircraft record the wind. So we corroborated that with those values as well. But as far as you seeing what the difference is and how they're changing, I thought that this is a good way to see it. And you can see how it kind of wasps down, gets skinny. This one, actually, the true airspeed dropped below the ground speed. So that's a tailwind momentarily. And lo and behold, that condition is causing that F factor to rise up. And this is a 1 kilometer average of that F factor number. So for your aircraft going about 100 knots, that's 19 seconds that this is averaging that value out over. So we can see how that's just the standard that the FAA came up with. So they're looking for a 1 kilometer band, seeing how the winds are changing over that time. And in this particular approach, it never met that criteria, but we've got some peaks there that are of interest. The next one, you can see most of the same thing, last 5 minutes of the flight, big gap, good strong headwind, and then just drops down there suddenly. And you can see how the ground speed picks up. That's a little tougher to handle in the aircraft. All of a sudden you're moving across the ground faster, and your aim point kind of shifts on you. So it's not the safest of conditions. So let's track it and see how often, where it's happening. And there you go. This guy actually exceeded the 0.1 criteria, and that's one we would track and put in our calculations. Here's the third and last one I looked at for low-level wind shear. If you're negative, that means it's a performance increasing wind condition, increasing and decreasing and decreasing. Wow, this is amazing. Last 5 minutes of this approach that must have been a heck of a ride. Well, enough so that he went around out of it. And looking at the ground track, that's why he's getting performance increasing and decreasing, because the winds are changing ahead of him, behind him, so just out there having some fun. But the point is that we can't always take the data for what it's saying. We have to look at, the circumstances around it. And that's what we'll try to program into the software to throw this one out and go, no, it's, he's on, a downwind still, one of many in the last 5 minutes. And with the C-17, we only look at the low-level wind shears that are occurring below 200 feet. And by our standards, you have to be on final established on centerline by 300. So there's no excuse not to be on centerline ready to land when you're at 200 feet and below. And we actually use, because we're a bigger airplane and we have lots of these, especially in Tornado Alley, we use 0.15 as our criteria to track. But being a smaller aircraft, Here at PMOPA, I'm suggesting we use 0.1. Okay. Next topic is turbulence. So we all know that we can get into turbulence on the other side of the mountains as the winds blow around us, as thermals create thunderstorms, as you're down low altitude, the heat rising, causing the thermals. As you're flying near a front, things will start getting squirrely on you. And as I explained, we've got all three dimensions of the winds and the strength. So we can do a pretty good job of looking at even these shears, like a jet stream. You're coming down through and all of a sudden the winds change on you. As we all know, bigger aircraft handle turbulence better than smaller aircraft. So that's a foot stomper for the rest of my briefing. I need your help to help figure out how much different it is. As you can see here, we've got turbulence intensities saying how it feels with the aircraft. So by the time you get to moderate, it remains in positive control, but in severe, aircraft may be momentarily out of control, and then extreme, it's impossible to control. And a question I have, when I flew the C-17, we have a button on our autopilot. It's a turbulence button, TURB, boom, just push it. If you sense turbulence, just hit it. And what it's going to do for you, it's going to keep your autopilot on, but instead of trying to hold an altitude and stress your wings out, trying to go up and down in turbulent air, it's just going to hold the pitch attitude so it doesn't dive and rise up. It's just going to ride it through. It's going to sink and rise with the wind and try to keep the stress off the wings. So an open question I have for you is like, maybe we shouldn't be using the autopilot at a certain point when you're in the winds or the turbulent winds, because if your autopilot's making an effort to correct back to an altitude that you're really not concerned about holding anymore, because it's you're going to get out of that altitude in short order with ATC. Just a question I have for you. All right, so I've got 6 of these cases to show you. The first slide I show you for all 6 is kind of the conditions. So the airspeeds, the altitude, so 10.5, so probably VFR, but they've all got their autopilot engaged for pretty much the whole event. And you can see they're getting beat up, plus or minus 30 feet. And if you look at the vertical speed, or the vertical speed, it's 700-800 feet per minute changes up and down, up and down. That's not comfortable. And there's the wind heading changes and the velocity changes. So with that, we roll into what it's doing with the vertical acceleration. And for these charts, it's actually recorded this way on your airplane. It's the normalized acceleration. That's think of that 0 is how far off of 1g, normal g it is. So that negative 0.5 isn't negative g's, it's just a half a g. You're still going to feel light in your seat. But these are some criteria that we use in the large aircraft of what that means, light, moderate, severe. I doubt these guys experience severe turbulence, but that's the G's they were experiencing at the time. Another way we look to try to tone this down and get some garbage out of the data is to, wrong way, do a root mean squared for 5 seconds. It kind of smooths the data out, but it's still, showing some peaks into the severe range. Again, I think that's a little inflated for the small aircraft, but they were definitely feeling something. And then using that same equation for F factor, it's looking at winds, not vertical acceleration, and it's barely meeting, getting close to the criteria of the large aircraft. So that's just telling me that large aircraft handle turbulent wind a lot easier. So what I did is I just made up notional numbers. These are just made up, but I need your help to come up with something we want to program into the software to look for, when we're getting to light, moderate, and severe turbulence. So So in this case, I made it out to be, hey, it's moderate. And after we talked to lots of people and they go, yeah, there were some points where I didn't feel in control of the aircraft, or, no, that wasn't so bad. And we'll just slowly work our way into what the numbers should be. I looked online for numbers like that. Haven't found them yet. I'll keep looking. But if we do a better job than what they do for our particular aircraft, that's okay. It not the generalized number we can use for the wing and the weights that we fly. It'd probably be more useful to us. All right, as you saw, they were at 10,500, and looks like they're out over the southwest, over the mountains, and you can see the colors changing back and forth, back and forth. That's the G's level. So something you have to guard against in detecting turbulence is, hey, no, that guy was in a turn. That's why you got G's. So for the G's, you want to see turbulence go up and down. So this is down and up and down and up. That's probably turbulence. Whereas if it just stayed on one side, the positive side, that's probably a turn where they're having to hold G's just to maintain level flight. The second one again is there's the speeds. It's 17,000 feet, getting beat up plus or minus 30 feet, boom, boom, boom. And this is by minutes. So about 5 lines is a minute. So each line is about 12 seconds of time passing by in this particular chart. There's the winds, not changing too much, a little change in direction. But again, 700-800 feet per minute in their vertical velocity. Boom, boom, boom. That's they're feeling it. And again, with the big aircraft, the heavy aircraft criteria, it's showing severe, but again, not much with this calculation. So using that notional one, there you go. Something worth tracking. And when we nail down these numbers, we'll build a, just like I showed you for the departure bank, we'll build analysis like that and track it. And again, pretty much level, or not level, but straight. So no turns involved. Here's the third one. They're at 3,600 feet. There's the speeds. Vertical velocity is, that's what, about 1,400 feet per minute and 800. So they're getting bumped around pretty good. And you can see the winds. It's only, 4, 5, 6 knots at a time, but it makes a difference. Severe here. Again, not much there. Severe here. But that's suspicious to me because the G's are in the positive, didn't get, a reflective amount there like this one is. So that's telling me they're up and down. That's more indicative of turbulence. So we may have to look at that one a little closer and figure out what's going on. And, there's a little turn right there. Okay, maybe that's where they turn. And this is out in the southwest again with the thermals rising, and anybody that flies out there knows you're going to get beat up. Okay, the fourth one, you can see it's not much going on here, and then boom, it starts happening, and boom, chop the speed down. And that's what we want to see. We want to see you get slow so you don't damage your aircraft and cause harm to yourself. They're in a descent. The winds are, there's a big drop off there from about 65 to 35, over just about a minute. That's pretty sudden. So they're just going through a different layer of wind in the descent, and it shook them up pretty good. And there you go again. I doubt it was severe, but it definitely caused some changes there. So again, just reiterating, we need to come up with the real numbers we're going to use to track it. And I need your help to do that because I'm not sitting in the seat with you. I can look at the numbers, but I can't tell if you would, if you were serving your customers any food, beverages or food, you'd consider that light. If you can still see the instrumentation, that's probably light. If you have no concerns about leaving the autopilot on, trying to fight for an altitude you're no longer interested in holding, that's probably light. Okay. This one's off the coast of Florida, and as we all know, those thunderstorms start building up in the afternoon and get pretty bumpy, even out away from them. Because I couldn't, I've only got the free version of flightaware.com. I can only look back 40 sorties, and this is much longer than that ago. So I couldn't bring up the flight with the actual, well, and it's not even actual weather. It's kind of I don't know if you've ever looked at it for a flight you did. It's like, no, I shot the gap right there. This is showing just one instant in time for the long period of the flight. So it may not show you exactly where you flew in relation to the weather, but going up, looking up that day's weather, there's definitely some action going on. So probably, out over the water, probably weather related, not thermals and mountain induced. Here's the fifth one, again in a descent. They're pretty not much going on, and it starts happening, and boom, they slow down again. And right here is about where it gets bad. Winds are changing, direction's changing. Again, this one's so big. The extreme, I didn't plot it here, but extreme on this classification is 0.55. Again, the hundreds of thousands of sorties I've looked at in the C-17, we don't have a single case of extreme turbulence. So again, a reason I don't think that these numbers are going to work out for our aircraft here. But look at this. They got -1 from the norm. So that is negative G's right there a couple times. So I got my head beat in to the ceiling of an eclipse once when I hit clear air turbulence. It was no fun, and my passengers weren't too happy either. So I would guarantee this sortie was memorable for the pilot. Here it is with the notional lightweight criteria, and they're coming down this way. They hit it, and they kind of move around trying to get out of it. And there's the weather for that day, because again, it was too far. You guys fly a lot, and 40 goes away pretty fast. Be able to look back at you. Maybe I'll have to pay for a higher capability and to be able to look back farther. All right, and the last one. So here they are, slowing down a little bit as they're descending, because they are flying. It's okay here, and then all of a sudden things start happening. They level off, and at that level off, there's a little burp right there, and then right here, burp. And the direction's changing as they're going through, and the winds are dropping off and bouncing around. And there you go. Another, probably put the head into the cockpit ceiling if your seatbelt's not strapped in enough. And if we use the flight aircraft criteria, so that one right there, and you can see right here, when it's turning, it turns blue a little bit. That's what I was saying there. You get some positive, above 1G in the turn. So those would be filtered out. But there's enough changing going on here, like right there. That's probably the negative 0.82. So they got real light in the seat there. And again, couldn't find that one on FlightAware because it's too old. But again, there was moisture and storms and low pressure that day. So I would think it was a weather related. All right. So as always, we need more data. So more of you, please sign up for this program to help us find the safe solutions for our activities. And if you do have a low level wind shear or a turbulence event, just reach out to me and let me know. Hey, Jim, I was flying flight level 200 on this day, and I got beat up pretty bad and requested ATC to send. I slowed down, and give me a war story. And if we don't have enough questions at the end of this, I wrote down a bunch of germane war stories for my weather experience over my 30 plus years of flying. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the moderators.
Jim, thank you very much. It's wonderful to see the data that's coming in and the type of analysis, and I appreciate that you're looking at this very carefully for the PA46 community and inviting our members to provide some input with respect to the parameters. So we don't have any questions currently in the Q&A portal. Want to give folks a moment to type their questions in, or if anybody has any thoughts with respect to speeds, any experience that you have, that would be great. So please feel free to type that into either the chat or the Q&A. We're monitoring both of those. And then Jim, you noted you had some questions or comments to engage further discussion. So I'll turn it back to you for that.
Okay, so that means you get to hear war stories. And I rack my brain. That was a pun not intended. For I flew about 5 years over in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I couldn't think of anything that was really low level wind shear and turbulence related. Other than it wasn't me. We did have an aircraft that was having problems communicating with the Pakistani air traffic control, and wound up flying right through the thickest part of a thunderstorm. And there was so much rain in it that it actually flamed out all 4 engines. They were able to recover, so that was good. Some other stories. Flying another crewman in the Honda when I was flying that. He was taking off at a Centennial there in the Southwest, and there's always turbulence there. The screen went blank, so I was curious about that. I'll stop sharing. Okay, turbulence, and he had a junior co-pilot that felt the turbulence and was like, "We need to slow down. We need to slow down." And the senior, the aircraft commander's like, "No, we're fine. This is, this departure wants the 250. We're going to maintain 250." And that co-pilot actually pulled the throttles back on 4 occasions. The aircraft commander told them to stop it, and they actually did a 180 and went back and landed because the pilot didn't feel safe flying with a co-pilot taking over his aircraft. Now, for those of you that don't do crew flying, there's probably a better way to do that. Go ahead and slow down. Let ATC know, hey, we're going to slow down to 200 knots due to turbulence. That probably would have nipped the thing in the bud. But again, that goes to the point that for some people, some turbulence feels real bad, and other people have a lot of experience. Like, no, that's nowhere near where I would want to slow down. Of course, always err to the safer side. Another story, flying a C-17 into Okinawa, Japan, using the color weather radar, looking out there for weather. Fairly clear everywhere except for right over the island. It's like, is that weather or is that the island painting back at me if you don't have the tilt set properly? So we actually got on the radio and called the weatherman there at Kadena and said, "Hey, do you have a cell over the field?" And he said, no cell, no cell. Well, it was probably the worst approach weather I've ever flown in because we were flying in this heavy rain. And we had a F-15 pilot sitting in our jump seat that was amazed that we could do that, fly the ILS down in that kind of weather. And after landing, I stomped into the Metro guy's office. And, "You said there was no cell." "Sir, that wasn't convective activity. It was just a heavy rainstorm." It's like, okay. So get your terminology correct so you make safe decisions based on good knowledge. Here's another war story about when I first started flying C-141s. I've done a lot of training in Texas and Oklahoma, and you see the big thunderstorms get up to 40, 50,000 feet. So you calibrate a bad storm as real high. Well, it turns out that a crew had that same feeling. They were flying in England, and the thunderstorm was only reported in the mid to low 20s. Like, that's not a bad one. They flew into it in a 141 and ripped their tail off, and of course the aircraft crashed. So don't take things lightly. If you're at a more than northern latitude, it may not sound like it's bad, but it's packing just as much punch. One time I was taken off in the. Are these good, Mike? Am I?
Yeah.
You want to hear these?
I came
Okay.
on. If we have a question that came in that I think is a really good question, which
Okay.
I want to ask
Sure.
Kim to answer, because I think more on the PMOPA side of this.
Okay.
So Kim, so with us, the question is, how will the data translate into safer flights? Will it include regular write-ups of errors? Will we publish aggregated data? Are there going to be specific cases that we would use for case studies? How are we going to use this data that comes in? It's a great question.
Yeah, that is an excellent question. Yes, ultimately, that's the entire goal. I mean, just analyzing data for the sake of analyzing data isn't going to get us anywhere. What we need to do is to see patterns. We need to see trends. We need to see what are actually significant events that are happening. Like, for instance, the reason that Jim took a look at this turbulence data was I don't know how many of you recall the accident we had. What was it, in late April? It was, I believe it was a Meridian that ripped the wings off flying across Missouri. And Blanco Lirio did a really good analysis of it within a couple of days. If you guys aren't familiar with his YouTube channel, you should become familiar with it, because he does a good job of analyzing why accidents happen, even before the NTSB takes their cut at it. Anyway, he pretty much figured that from the data that he could get, the ADSB data and all that, that the pilot was flying well above maneuvering speed when he flew into a little teeny tiny cell. And then the photographs afterwards, well, then the data basically shows about where the wings ripped off, because the fuselage accelerated and there was tumbling and changes of direction. And then there was a picture after the accident of the fuselage with nothing but just the little stubs of the wings, and the outboards were gone. So taking a look at our record of flying above maneuvering speeds for our airplanes in turbulence could actually save a life here. This can become a training emphasis item. It's something to discuss with our instructors. We instruct with people when they go through recurrent and initial, and to try to emphasize this is a problem. At this point in time, with the amount of data that we have and the information that we have, all we can do is really just kind of take a look at it and see what kind of prevalence there is. And as Jim said, that, I mean, like, he doesn't even really know what our turbulence limits are going to be. They're going to be less than the heavy airplanes, because these little airplanes don't tolerate turbulence as well as the bigger airplanes that have more flexible wings than we do. So yes, there's still a lot of more work to be done. Does this answer your question? Whoever answered, Michael Schaus. Does that help?
Yeah. So, and Kim, just to kind of put a finer point on it, so we do envision, as we're seeing threats and errors, we'll be incorporating that into some of the education sessions we do, webinars, convention education sessions, regional events, and also the standardized training program that we're developing. We'll be able to take some of the learnings from the flight data monitoring program and work that into the standardized training to ensure that mistakes aren't being made at the initial and recurrent training levels as well. And Michael says, yes, it answers the question.
Great. It looks like there's some more questions. Oh, no.
Nope, just his. Yep.
Okay. Just
Great. Well, with that, Jim, do you have any further content to provide? If not, don't want to keep people just hanging on in the event that people need to get back to work. I think this is a very helpful overview of what you're learning so far and how we'll be able to apply that. Again, I encourage members to participate in the flight data monitoring program. One note, you do have to have avionics that have an air data computer in order for the data to be truly meaningful. Even if you don't, it doesn't mean that you won't benefit from the program, because those who are able to contribute data will learn from their lessons. There's no reason to believe that the threat and errors that we're identifying from their data will be any different from what you would be getting from your flying experience. So there's value to everybody, even if you don't have the avionics eligible for participation in the program. You'll still get great benefit from it. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much, Jim, for your great work on this. And Kim, thank you for your leadership in this area. You're the one who brought this to us as a priority for PMOPA. And I think it's showing that there's a lot of great value in that data, and this will help us with our safety initiatives. So thank you all very much for attending. Greatly appreciate it. And we'll see you for our next webinar, which is in mid-July. It's going to be not only a preview of Oshkosh, a brief preview of Oshkosh and our participation there, but also Piper and Pratt & Whitney Canada will be introducing you to the M700 Fury. Thank you all again. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care, everybody.